Let's get right into it. Number 10. The Barbershop Bloodbath. Picture this. You walk into your local barbershop for a trim, maybe a little beard shaping, maybe a cheeky bowl cut, and instead of just snipping your hair, the guy in the apron also offers to slice open your vein and drain a pint of blood. And people actually said yes. In medieval Europe, barbers weren't just shaving faces, they were bleeding people like livestock. See, the theory back then was that your body had 4 magical juices: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If those humors got out of whack, your soul basically went on strike, and the solution was to balance them by stabbing your arm and letting the red stuff leak out until you felt better. Spoiler, you usually didn't. Even weirder, this is why the red and white barber pole exists. The red symbolizes the blood, the white is the bandages, and the pole itself? That's supposed to represent the stick you gripped while someone siphoned your life force like a Capri Sun. Next time you see that pole spinning outside Supercuts, just remember, it's basically an ancient advertisement for fresh, artisanal exsanguination. It worked about as well as replacing your car oil by slashing your tires. But hey, at least you got a haircut with your near-death experience. Number 9. Leech therapy, a slug assault. Leeches. Nature's little medical interns who never asked for the job. Medieval doctors loved these slimy bloodsuckers because they thought leeches could gently remove your excess humors without the whole messy knife situation. Which sounds nice, until you realize you've basically turned your body into an all-you-can-eat buffet for swampworms. Here's how it went. You'd show up with a fever, or a cough, or maybe just seasonal depression, which they didn't even know existed, and instead of sympathy, the doctor would slap some leeches on your chest and say, "There we go, that's the healing." Meanwhile, the leeches are getting drunk on your plasma like it's happy hour at a vampire bar. Doctors adored leeches so much that there were actual leech shortages in the Middle Ages. Imagine the panic. Oh no, we're out of our tiny parasites. How will we cure Janet's headache? It's like running out of Band-Aids but replacing them with hungry water balloons that won't let go. And yeah, sometimes it worked, not because of balancing humors, but because draining blood lowers blood pressure. Translation, you just felt dizzy and thought you were cured. Basically, medieval medicine was like shaking a soda can and calling it therapy. Number 8. The Urine Whisperers. Forget MRIs and blood panels. In medieval times, if you wanted a diagnosis, you had to hand a doctor a jar of your pee. And not just any jar. This was a whole event. Doctors carried special pee wheels, colorful charts with dozens of shades of yellow, brown, and suspicious green, each supposedly revealing the secrets of your health. You'd walk in with, say, stomach pain. The doctor would swish your urine around like a sommelier sniffing wine, then declare, yes, you suffer from too much phlegm in the brain. Which is wild because not only is phlegm not in your brain, but also, when did my pee turn into a crystal ball? This wasn't a quick thing either. Medieval physicians had entire books devoted to pee interpretation. They believed the color, smell, even taste, yes, some of them sipped it, could tell them if you were cursed, possessed, or just had indigestion. Congratulations, your personal liquid waste was the medieval equivalent of WebMD. On the bright side, at least it was non-invasive. On the not-so-bright side, some poor apprentice had to stand there nodding respectfully while his boss slurped a spoonful of Dave's Tuesday morning urine sample. That's dedication, or possibly just a cry for help. Number 7. Trepanation, or do I head holes? Ever had a headache so bad you thought, man, I just wish I could drill a hole in my skull? Well, medieval doctors actually did that. It's called trepanation, and it was considered a legitimate cure for migraines, seizures, or, get this, evil spirits. Yeah, because clearly the best way to solve brain problems is to pop open the casing like it's a soda can. Doctors would take a sharp tool, usually something that looked more like a blacksmith's drill than a surgical instrument, and bore into your skull. And here's the terrifying part. People survive this. We know because archaeologists keep finding ancient skulls with perfectly healed little circles, like someone turned their head into a giant flute. The reasoning? Medieval medicine thought disease came from trapped humors, pressure, or demons. So drilling a hole was basically their version of turn it off and back on again. If you were lucky, you got relief. If you weren't, congratulations, you just became another skeleton in a monastery graveyard with an oddly ventilated forehead. And don't think anesthesia was involved. Nope, you got a swig of wine, a prayer, and a saw to the skull. Imagine the Yelp reviews. Trepanation was okay, staff was friendly, but would not recommend the hole in my head. 3 stars. Number 6. The Bubonic Plague Fashion Show. If you're picturing medieval doctors as wise old scholars with flowing robes, let me fix that. During the Black Death, they looked like demonic bird people. The infamous plague doctor costume, long black cloak, gloves, and that terrifying bird mask, was basically a medieval hazmat suit. The beak wasn't just for aesthetics, though. Doctors stuffed it with herbs, flowers, and sometimes literal vinegar-soaked sponges because they believed bad air, miasma, caused the plague. So you ended up with a 6-foot crow man waddling through your village smelling like a cursed potpourri display. Terrifying, but at least he was fragrant. Did the outfit work? Not really. The herbs didn't stop the fleas carrying Yersinia pestis, the actual bacteria behind the plague. But the long coat and mask did accidentally protect doctors from flea bites, so the outfit kinda sorta worked by accident. Imagine inventing PPE but for the wrong reasons. It's like creating seatbelts because you're worried about highway ghosts. And just to make it weirder, plague doctors sometimes carried canes, not to lean on, but to poke patients from a safe distance. So if you were dying of plague, your last memory might have been a bird-headed dude jabbing you with a stick like you were a piece of roadkill. Truly the peak of bedside manner. Number 5. Boiled toad soup for science. Imagine you're sick. You drag yourself to the doctor, hoping for some medieval miracle, and the doctor hands you a dead toad. Sometimes dried, sometimes boiled into a paste, sometimes strapped to your body like a squishy, amphibious band-aid. Because apparently, frogs were nature's cure-all. The logic, if you can call it that, was sympathetic magic. Since toads were gross, warty, and full of ooze, they must be able to cure gross, warty, oozy diseases. Got bubonic plague boils? Slap on a toad. Acne? Smear some frog juice. Feeling unlucky? Carry a desiccated amphibian in your pocket like a cursed Tamagotchi. And yes, people ate them too. Recipes included powdered toad mixed with wine or a kind of frog cake baked into bread. Because clearly nothing says medicine like amphibian crumble. Of course, none of it worked, unless the disease you were trying to cure was not having enough salmonella. But hey, it gave medieval doctors something to do besides bleeding you dry or drilling your skull. That's progress, right? Number 4. Astrology over anatomy. You'd think doctors would spend their time studying bodies, but nope, half the time they were studying stars. In the Middle Ages, astrology and medicine were basically best friends. Want to know the best day for surgery? Check your horoscope. Feeling under the weather? Mercury is probably in retrograde, and now your gallbladder hates you. Medieval doctors kept zodiac charts handy and believed each star sign controlled a different part of your body. Aries was your head, Taurus your neck, Leo your heart, and so on. Which sounds fun, until you realize someone might delay treating your infected leg because Mars was in the wrong house. Imagine limping into the clinic and the doctor says, "Sorry, can't amputate today." Jupiter says you should meditate instead. Even bloodletting had an astrological schedule. Physicians would check the moon phases before deciding which vein to open, because obviously the moon's opinion matters when you're about to get stabbed. Basically, your medical care depended less on your symptoms and more on whether your birthday was in Sagittarius. The irony? Sometimes the timing accidentally helped. Like avoiding surgery during certain lunar phases meant doctors unknowingly gave you more time to heal naturally. But don't get it twisted, you weren't being healed by cosmic vibes. You were being healed by luck and the fact your doctor got distracted staring at constellations. Number 3. Cauterize everything. If medieval medicine had a motto, it would have been, when in doubt, set it on fire. Broken arm? Cauterize. Arrow wound? Cauterize. Stub toe? Probably still cauterize. They genuinely believed burning the wound shut with a hot iron or boiling oil not only stopped bleeding but also drove out disease. Now, cauterization does work in modern medicine, in controlled, sterile environments with precise tools. Medieval cauterization, however, was more like a medieval barbecue. They'd heat up a poker until it glowed red, then press it against your flesh while assistants held you down. The smell alone probably traumatized half the village. The worst part? They didn't just use it on wounds. Cauterization was also used for headaches, epilepsy, and even mental illness. Yes, if you were depressed, a doctor might suggest burning your scalp with a hot rod to rebalance your humors. Nothing says compassionate care like turning your forehead into a grilled cheese. Did it work? Sometimes. It stopped bleeding, sure, but it also caused horrific infections which they couldn't treat anyway. Basically, medieval doctors were pyromaniacs in disguise, waving torches around and calling it medicine. Number 2. The King's Touch, a royal scam. Forget antibiotics. What you really needed in medieval Europe was a monarch with magic hands. People genuinely believed kings and queens had the divine power to heal diseases, especially something called scrofula, a nasty form of tuberculosis. They called it the king's evil. The cure? Have the king touch you. This wasn't a one-off thing. Royal healing ceremonies became huge public events. Hundreds of sick peasants would line up just to have the monarch graze their skin like a celebrity meet and greet. Sometimes they even got a special coin afterward as proof they'd been touched by royalty, like medieval merch. Did it work? Absolutely not. Unless you count placebo effects and the fact that being blessed might have given you a morale boost before you inevitably keeled over. But politically, it was genius. The king got to prove he was chosen by God, and the peasants got to believe they had a shot at recovery, win-win if you ignore the dying part. So yeah, while modern doctors are stressing over medical school debt, medieval doctors were just rich people with crowns saying, "Begone, illness," and calling it a day. Number 1. Surgery was basically torture. Let's wrap this up with the piece de resistance, medieval surgery. And by surgery, I don't mean sterile operating rooms and careful stitching. I mean someone holding you down on a wooden table while another guy goes at you with what looks suspiciously like a gardening tool. There was no anesthesia. The best you got was a gulp of wine, or maybe some opium if your doctor was really fancy. Then it was straight into amputations, tumor removals, or yanking out arrows with pliers. And no, they didn't wash their hands first. Germ theory wasn't even a twinkle in anyone's eye yet, so infections were basically guaranteed. Amputation, for example, went like this. Strap the patient down, saw through flesh and bone as fast as possible, speed was literally the only survival factor, then seal the wound with, you guessed it, cauterization. If you survived blood loss, shock, and the village blacksmith cosplaying as a surgeon, you still had to roll the dice against gangrene. Surgeons were often seen as lower class than physicians too. Doctors were the educated ones who read books about urine colors. Surgeons were just the dudes who got really good at cutting open chickens and figured, humans can't be that different. Which, to be fair, was kind of true, but also horrifying. So yeah, if you ever time travel to the Middle Ages, don't get sick, don't get injured, and definitely don't trust a man with a saw who claims he can fix you. Because odds are, he's about to fix you permanently, in the graveyard. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.